They called him the billionaire nobody noticed. Tall, gentle, and endlessly witty, Ethan Clarke had everything wealth could offer, except love. His size and appearance often made him the target of whispers, sidelong glances, and thoughtless jokes. Women who approached him rarely sought him for who he was, they were drawn by his fortune, not his heart. Yet destiny had a different plan. One ordinary trip to the local supermarket changed everything. It was there he met Lila Moreno, a woman whose laughter seemed to brighten even the dull fluorescent aisles. What started as a fleeting encounter quickly unfolded into a connection that defied appearances, silenced gossip, and proved that true beauty lives far beyond the eye. Ethan Clarke. That was his name. At 35, he was among the richest men in the city. His empire spanned luxury hotels, shipping ventures, and skyscrapers that bore his name like a crown of glass. Generous, humorous, and approachable, he carried a lightness of spirit that few ever noticed. Most people focused only on the surface, the tailored suit stretched over his broad frame, the roundness of his features, and the heaviness of his movements. His laughter, bright and frequent, was often misunderstood. Women, in particular, looked past his charm. Some offered polite smiles, others lingered with eyes calculating his wealth rather than noticing his humor. Loneliness followed him like a faithful shadow. At gala events and high-profile parties, he was never truly with anyone, friends were transactional, women charming until they received gifts. The whispers always circulated, will Ethan Clarke ever marry? Surely, it will be for money. He heard it all, silently carrying the sting, though he rarely let it show. Outwardly, he remained jovial, joking at board meetings and making even his staff laugh, masking the solitude he had grown accustomed to. It happened on a Thursday morning, amid the ordinary hum of a busy supermarket. Ethan sometimes preferred to do his own shopping. It grounded him, reminded him he was more than a name on a skyscraper. Pushing a silver cart, he hummed softly as he navigated aisles lined with neatly stacked goods. In the cereal section, something unusual happened. Reaching for the last box of Honey Crunch Delight, his hand paused as another hand simultaneously reached for the same prize. Their fingers nearly touched. He blinked, and there she was, Lila Moreno. She was stunning, deep brown skin glowing under the fluorescent lights, hair cascading softly around her face, posture graceful and confident. She wore an elegant dress that suggested taste rather than extravagance. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. You should take it, Ethan said kindly, stepping back. Ladies first. She shook her head. No, you go ahead. I'll find something else. He looked at the box, then back at her. Well, it seems fate wants us to fight for breakfast, he thought. With a playful shrug, he set the box back on the shelf. There. Now neither of us wins. Lila laughed, a warm, melodic sound that made Ethan grin. It was rare for someone to laugh at his jokes naturally, without pretense. You're ridiculous, she said, shaking her head. Guilty as charged, he replied, hands raised in mock surrender. But life's too short not to be ridiculous. From there, conversation flowed effortlessly. They wandered the aisles, laughing at small absurdities, Ethan pretending to struggle with labels, holding a watermelon and whispering, "Do you think it shares secrets with the fridge at night?" Lila's laughter was genuine, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt a lightness he had forgotten. She wasn't calculating or pitying him, she simply enjoyed the moment. At checkout, they paid separately, and as Ethan prepared to leave, he hesitated. His heart raced. Do you shop here often? He asked cautiously. Usually twice a week, she replied. Mondays and Thursdays. Ethan's smile hid his excitement. A routine shopper, maybe I'll see her again. That Thursday, she left the store with a smile. But for Ethan, her laughter lingered like a song, echoing in the quiet halls of his penthouse. The following Monday, he returned to the supermarket, scanning the aisles. She wasn't there. Disappointment prickled at him. On Thursday, however, there she was, pushing a cart near the produce section. Heart pounding, he casually reached for oranges. Their eyes met. Recognition and warmth passed between them. "Fancy seeing you here," he said, grinning. "Or maybe you just like this supermarket," she teased. "Guilty again," he said, winking. A rhythm formed aisle by aisle, laughter punctuating their small adventures. By checkout, Ethan had gathered his courage. "Would you mind if we exchanged numbers?" he asked. Lila smiled, and they swapped contacts. Their conversations became constant, light, and playful. Ethan invited her to dinner, and as they met in a quiet restaurant, laughter filled the air again. For the first time, Ethan wasn't thinking about wealth or judgment, he was simply enjoying himself with Lila. Their connection grew steadily, built on shared humor and honesty. At first, they chose quiet venues where he wouldn't be recognized. Eventually, Lila encouraged him to stop hiding. "Why do you worry about who sees us?" she asked. "People, they don't always understand," he admitted. "They'll see you, then look at me, and wonder what's wrong." She reached across the table. "Let them look. I'm happy. That's what matters." Even as whispers swirled around them, Lila stayed. She embraced his humor, warmth, and sincerity. But her mother was not so easily convinced. "You're too refined for this," she insisted one evening. "A man like him will only drag you down. What will people say?" Her father was quieter but concerned. Eventually, he arranged a meeting with Ethan at his office. Ethan greeted him warmly, offering his trademark smile and a firm handshake. "I'm honored you came," Ethan said sincerely. "Lila speaks highly of you." The father had rehearsed warnings in his mind, but Ethan spoke calmly, with honesty and humor. He didn't defend his wealth, he spoke about Lila's laughter, the peace she brought him, and the respect he felt for her. By the end, the father understood why Lila had chosen him. Ethan was nothing like the shallow suitors who had sought her for money. Genuine. Kind. Loving. He shook Ethan's hand. "You're a good man," he said quietly. Dinner dates continued, laughter continuing to bridge the gap between their worlds. Lila shared her past experiences, explaining how previous relationships had only focused on her family's wealth. Ethan listened, heart full of empathy. "But you," she said softly, "you just make me laugh. That means everything." Through whispered doubts, family disapproval, and public speculation, Ethan and Lila's bond deepened. Their love was anchored in trust, humor, and genuine companionship. Trips, late-night conversations, and quiet adventures solidified their connection. Finally, the day came. Their wedding was a spectacle of elegance and devotion. Guests arrived from across the globe, chandeliers sparkled, stained glass shimmered, and every detail reflected both grandeur and intimacy. Ethan, in his tailored tuxedo, waited at the altar, nervous and elated. Lila appeared in a gown of white satin and lace, radiating beauty and grace. The ceremony was heartfelt. Vows were exchanged, rings placed, and promises sealed with emotion. When they were declared husband and wife, Ethan pulled Lila close and kissed her, their world finally theirs. The reception was alive with music, laughter, and admiration. Friends praised Lila's warmth and Ethan's generosity. Even her once doubtful father toasted them, acknowledging the love and happiness Ethan had brought. Over time, they traveled the world as partners, yet home remained their sanctuary. Ethan continued to make culinary disasters, Lila rescuing dinner with laughter and affection. They hosted friends and family, filled their home with joy, and remained unfazed by gossip. Their story became a testament to the power of love beyond appearances. They showed the world that wealth was secondary to kindness, that laughter could overcome prejudice, and that true happiness came from connection, honesty, and shared joy. Years later, Ethan and Lila were remembered not for their fortune or beauty, but for the laughter, trust, and love that defined their lives. Ethan often said, "It's never about appearances. It's about laughter, honesty, and joy. That's all it ever was. Lila would smile, slipping her hand into his, whispering, always. Together, they proved that love chooses you, daily, in ways no wealth or rumor ever could. Ethan Clarke, once the billionaire nobody wanted, became the man everyone admired not for money, but for a love that radiated endlessly. Ethan and Lila's connection deepened with each passing day. What had begun as playful encounters in the supermarket evolved into long, unhurried walks in quiet neighborhoods, brunches at hidden cafes, and evenings spent talking for hours about everything and nothing. Ethan discovered that Lila had a knack for noticing the smallest details, the way he absent-mindedly tapped his fingers when nervous, the tiny smudge of flour on his cuff when cooking, even the way his laughter could brighten a gloomy morning. She found comfort in the simplicity of his presence, the warmth in his voice, the honesty that seemed to spill from him naturally. Evenings often ended on his penthouse balcony, where the city sprawled endlessly beneath them. Ethan would lean on the railing, Lila at his side, and they'd watch the lights shimmer like fireflies across the streets. He talked about his childhood, about the pressure of expectations, and the loneliness that had once haunted him despite his fortune. She listened, never judging, only smiling and occasionally nudging him with a gentle tease, reminding him that he didn't have to carry the weight alone. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's world began to shift. He no longer noticed the glances of strangers when he walked down the street, nor did he feel the sting of gossip that had followed him through his adult life. With Lila, he could laugh freely, stumble over his words, be imperfect without consequence. And Lila, too, began to open doors she had kept firmly closed for years. She shared stories of her past relationships, the disappointment she had felt when men saw her as a prize rather than a person, and her fear that wealth and beauty were barriers rather than blessings. Ethan's presence, however, dismantled that fear slowly, one shared laugh and gentle gesture at a time. Their first weekend getaway was spontaneous. They drove out to a quiet coastal town a few hours away, the kind of place where the beaches were nearly deserted and the air smelled of salt and pine. They rented a small, rustic cabin overlooking the ocean, far from the glare of flashing cameras and the assumptions of the outside world. Ethan tried, and spectacularly failed, to cook a seafood dinner, leaving shells scattered across the counter and shrimp boiling over. Lila laughed until tears ran down her cheeks, finally stepping in to save the meal. It was in these small, imperfect moments that their bond solidified. They were not perfect, but together they fit, and the imperfections became their shared story. Back in the city, their relationship began to attract attention. Friends, colleagues, and even casual acquaintances noticed how Ethan's posture seemed lighter, how his laughter was more genuine, how he seemed to glow in Lila's presence. Rumors started. Of course, people whispered about how Lila, with her grace and beauty, could surely do better, or how Ethan's size and appearance might never match the elegance of someone like her. But when they were together, none of that mattered. Lila brushed off the gossip with ease, her hand in his, her laughter cutting through the chatter like a clear bell. Family visits were the next hurdle. Lila's mother remained skeptical, her approval slow to arrive, clouded by old prejudices and the sharp edge of societal expectation. She watched Ethan carefully, her eyes searching for flaws. He met her gaze with patience, kindness, and humor, never once trying to impress with wealth or status, only with the sincerity that had captured her daughter's heart. Over time, even her disapproval softened. She began to see not just a wealthy man, but a man who genuinely cared for her daughter's happiness. One evening, Ethan took Lila to a quiet rooftop garden overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars brought down to earth. He held her hands in his, eyes searching hers, and spoke softly. "Every day with you has changed me. Not because you make life perfect, but because you make life feel alive. You see me, really see me, and I never thought anyone could." Lila smiled, the warmth in her eyes reflecting the city lights. "Ethan, I don't care about your money. I don't care about anything the world sees. I care about you, the man you are, the laughter you give, the honesty you live by." And with that affirmation, something unspoken passed between them. It was a promise of trust, of shared joy, and of a future untainted by the expectations of others. As months continued to pass, they navigated the challenges that inevitably came with their unusual pairing. They faced moments of doubt, the occasional hurtful comment, and the whispers that never seemed to fully die. But each obstacle only strengthened the bond they had forged. Ethan learned to accept that Lila's loyalty was steadfast, that she saw him beyond the physical, beyond the wealth, beyond the gossip. Lila learned to trust that Ethan's heart was pure, that his love was consistent and unwavering, and that in him, she had found a partner who would weather any storm. When the day of their wedding arrived, it was everything they had imagined and more. The ceremony was held in a grand cathedral that resonated with the echoes of centuries, adorned with delicate flowers, soft candlelight, and the quiet anticipation of loved ones. Ethan waited at the altar, nervous yet certain, while Lila descended the aisle with an elegance that seemed effortless. When their eyes met, the world outside ceased to exist. They exchanged vows that were simple, heartfelt, and unembellished words that captured their journey, their laughter, their struggles, and the depth of their love. The reception that followed was filled with laughter, music, and joyous celebration. Friends and family, initially cautious, now joined wholeheartedly in the happiness of the couple. Even Lila's mother, once skeptical, could no longer deny the love that radiated between them. Their first dance was a private world of its own, a gentle sway beneath twinkling lights that reflected not just wealth, but the depth of connection they had built together. In the years that followed, Ethan and Lila continued to grow together. They traveled the world, explored hidden towns, laughed through culinary disasters, and found delight in the small joys of everyday life. Their home became a sanctuary of warmth, humor, and shared stories. They faced the world's judgment together, but the whispers no longer had power over them. Their laughter, trust, and mutual respect created a shield stronger than any rumor or expectation. And so, Ethan Clarke, the man once dismissed by the world for his appearance, and Lila Moreno, the woman once wary of love tainted by wealth and expectation, found in each other a joy neither had thought possible. Their love became a testament not to fortune or beauty, but to laughter, honesty, and the profound impact of seeing one another fully, as they truly were. Married life for Ethan and Lila was a delicate balance of ordinary routines and extraordinary moments. Mornings often began with the soft sunlight spilling through the curtains, and the aroma of coffee brewing in the kitchen. Ethan, despite his fortune and his once meticulously polished image, remained hilariously inept at making breakfast. Pancakes were too thick or burnt along the edges, eggs occasionally slid off the plate, and coffee cups sometimes clinked too loudly on the marble counter. Lila, ever patient, would chuckle as she rescued his culinary mishaps, slipping a perfectly cooked pancake onto his plate with a teasing smile. "You'd think with all your money, you'd hire someone to cook," she'd say, shaking her head. "I hire someone to do taxes, not to steal my joy," he'd reply with a grin, his eyes twinkling. Those mornings were filled with laughter, and even the mundane tasks, the folding of laundry, watering plants, or grocery shopping became moments to share jokes, playful glances, and whispered comments that made them feel like teenagers in love rather than a power couple watched by the world. Ethan and Lila found ways to explore the world together, often choosing places that offered anonymity and simplicity over grandeur. They wandered through cobblestone streets in small European towns, sampled street food from bustling markets in Asia, and shared gondola rides in Venice, laughing every time Ethan managed to nearly tip the boat with his clumsy enthusiasm. Travel wasn't about luxury for them, it was about shared experiences and the freedom to be unguarded. At home, Ethan discovered that the laughter they shared could be a remedy for almost anything. On evenings when he felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing down, Lila would find him in his study, papers scattered across the desk, tension furrowing his brow. Without a word, she'd sneak in with a ridiculous hat or a dramatic reading of one of his reports, exaggerating the importance of every number and chart until he doubled over in laughter. One particular evening remained etched in their memories. Ethan had been struggling with a critical merger, the kind of high-stakes decision that could dominate his thoughts for days. Lila, seeing him tense, decided to intervene. She slid into the office wearing a bright red clown nose, holding a stack of his reports like a drum set. "You can't possibly take this seriously without this essential accessory," she declared, banging the papers lightly as though they were drums. Ethan stared at her, incredulous, before a deep laugh tore from him. It wasn't just amusement, it was relief, a release from the pressure that had been suffocating him. From that night onward, whenever the world grew too heavy, one look at Lila was enough to lighten it. Their bond was tested, as all love stories are. Rumors about Ethan's past and wealth never fully disappeared. Occasionally, distant relatives or business associates would cast veiled judgments, questioning Lila's intentions or Ethan's ability to maintain happiness. But together, they developed an almost unspoken armor. Lila's trust and laughter reminded Ethan that appearances could never touch the honesty of what they shared. And Ethan's unwavering devotion reassured Lila that she had chosen a love built on authenticity rather than expectation. Family moments became a tapestry of joy and gentle teasing. Holidays were spent alternating between Lila's family home, where Ethan learned the fine art of enduring playful jabs about his size and clumsy tendencies, and Ethan's sprawling estate, where Lila introduced new traditions, picnic-style dinners in the garden, late-night storytelling under the stars, and spontaneous scavenger hunts for hidden treasures around the property. They laughed at each other's failures, cheered at successes, and learned to celebrate the little things: the perfectly baked loaf of bread, a sunset that mirrored their moods, or a quiet Sunday morning when they could just exist together. One winter, they decided to host a charity gala at their estate, combining Lila's philanthropic passion with Ethan's business connections. The night was filled with elegance, music, and